In this workshop, we're going to look at quoting and punctuating dialogue. So let's jump over to Word and we'll get everything straightened out by looking at all the rules through examples. Here I am in Microsoft Word, and let's start writing. This is the way you quote dialogue. You take the sentence and its ending punctuation, the period, and you put it all within double quotes. Now notice I'm pressing the same double quote character, but Word has what's known as smart quotes. So it'll actually put a different double quote in the front and in the end so that they match. This is optional, and it's just something that Word does, and it kind of makes things look nice. Let's try another line. Now, let's say we have more dialogue. So I get rid of the ending quote, and I just keep on going with the dialogue. So I can have multiple sentences of dialogue. So we have two sentences quoted as dialogue now. Now we don't know who's speaking. If we want to attribute this to someone, we can take the second sentences and both sentences would be attributed to Sarah. Let's use the H in Sarah this time, which is optional, depending on how the name is spelled. And then a new speaker starts speaking. So we go to a new line. Hello. And we want this person to talk to Sarah. So let's say Sarah. Now, what if we want to attribute this dialogue to Frankie? Then we would replace the period with a comma, and we'd say Frankie said, or Frankie alluded, or Frankie whatever. Now, one of the things you're going to find is as you attribute, whoops, we just have Sarah up here, Sarah said, is that as you start attributing dialogue and you're doing it constantly, you're going to have to try and find out new words because you don't want to just say, Sarah said, Frankie said, Sarah said, Frankie said, and go back and forth. It gets really boring. So you're going to change to words like alluded. If only two people are speaking, you can attribute the dialogue to the first couple of lines and then just go back and forth. You don't need to attribute dialogue anymore. If you see that the dialogue is changing because it's on a new paragraph, you'll know that it's the other person of the two. So you don't always need to attribute your dialogue. Now, let's try what is happening today. Now here, because it ends in a question mark, the sentence, we don't replace the question mark with a comma. We leave the question mark and say Sarah quipped. So this is where you start getting into weird words when you attribute constantly. So we have said, alluded, quipped. You can go through all of these synonyms for how to say said. Like if I go here and I right click and I pick synonyms, stated, spoke, replied, thought, told. We can use all of these words in place of said as we're attributing dialogue constantly. But let's say we don't need to attribute dialogue. Not a lot. Want to go to the park? Now, we did not attribute this dialogue, but we really don't need to, as I said, because there's two speakers, and we're on a new line, so we know Sarah isn't speaking. It's got to be Frankie. And if we do another line, sure, then we know that's Sarah speaking. So you don't constantly need to attribute. So let's say now we have the two friends walked hand in down the sidewalk toward the park. They passed a friendly dog on the way. So since this is just narrative and it's not dialogue, we started on a new paragraph. Now if we have short narrative like, I like Dogs. Sarah interjected. Dogs had always been her particular favorite. I want to get one. Now notice here, we've got dialogue, then narrative, then dialogue, but we don't break into 3 paragraphs because it's the same person speaking and it's just a short aside here of narrative. So here you've seen all of the rules. Quote, dialogue, end in a comma if it ends, the dialogue ends in a period to attribute to someone, attribute to multiple people if you have a lot of people speaking. Then you don't need to attribute if it's just 2 people speaking, and break to a new paragraph if it's just narrative. And that's all your rules. So hopefully you understand how to write dialogue now. In the next lecture, we're going to look at the dialogue quiz. So you'll have another 5 questions on quoting and punctuating dialogue. I'll see you there.